Welcome to the Euro Step Brit podcast.
Game's going to be decided here. Harold spots up, doesn't go, put back is good! Roberto Gallina with a second chance opportunity. Aris lead. Per Gunter for three, got it! Per Gunter drei punta. Back outside, Walshe. Down the middle, gets it to go and he enjoyed that one.
Hello, welcome back. It's episode 18 of the Euro Step Brit podcast. We'll call this one Same Game, Different Sport. My guest is Great Britain international Evan Walshe, who spent last season in the SLB with the Bristol Flyers. In this episode, we'll discuss Evan's basketball career today and look back at some of the highs and lows along the way that have got him to where he is today. We'll also get Evan's insights into the world of 3x3 and how much it has become a part of his life. So, without further ado, let's get to it. Well, Evan, welcome to the podcast. It's great to get you on. Obviously, you're involved in a lot of basketball all year round. When I look at players' careers, I normally like to go through a timeline, but I think this time round, let's look at the past season just gone. You spent what I thought was a very productive year with the Bristol Flyers. How did it all come about?
Firstly, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. It's nice to talk about the journey, and yeah, obviously Bristol was next on the list for me this year. I ended up, I would agree with you. Very productive year. I really enjoyed myself down there in Bristol. The people are amazing, and the club, excellent. Everyone around that club, really cares about the basketball and cares about you as a person. So that really goes a long way. But yeah, I was a free agent last summer as well, and was very much just figuring out what was next. And you never really know where that's going to take you over the course of that little summer off-season period. I had some, interest from, sort of all over Europe and a couple of places in the SLB, and I think that Bristol seemed right for me in the moment. I had the privilege of working with Andreas before at Junior GB, and then with the national team briefly in the summer. So at that moment in time, it felt right. I think for the club, it was the right thing as well. Being a British talent and being able to contribute is a big thing in this league, or in our league, I should say. But at that time, it was great, and like I said, I really enjoyed myself.
One of the things I enjoyed about this season was I got a chance to come down and do some of the commentaries in Bristol. And it didn't matter whether you started or you came in off the bench, you always had an impact from the second you stepped on the floor. And I think that's something I've seen throughout your career, going back to when I first saw you back at Surrey. But I do want to talk about the last game of the regular season. You happened to get a triple-double against Surrey, I think, in 2 overtimes. Was that your first career triple-double?
Yeah, safe to say that. Yeah, that definitely was.
Would that have been one of your highlights of the season?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I sort of spoke about it a little bit after that game. I think to put in a performance like that is not necessarily something that you prepare for mentally. I think a lot of people will go into games visualizing what they want to do, what they want to get out of it, and hard to sort of visualize that one. But obviously it was the last regular season game of the league. I very much went into that game with I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. We didn't have, obviously, Keely Johnson. He wasn't available. He had just got hurt, and it was one of those situations where I sort of looked around and sort of went, well, it's time to sort of put the team on my back a little bit. And obviously, we had a lot of talented players this year, but in terms of where my pride was at, I really wanted to pull the team over the line. So to be able to put a performance in like that is obviously the top end of that. It doesn't always work out the way you sort of intend. But yeah, I mean, to go out there with the mindset of I'm going to do anything it takes to win, and to go double overtime, triple-double personal stat line is a performance I surely will never forget. That's for sure. I think it will probably go down as I walked off the court and I said to some of my team, I just said, that's probably the best game of basketball I'll ever play in my life. So it was a special moment, and yeah, it was fun to be a part of, really.
Right, you got something now to aim to beat. You can always try and beat that in the future, can't you? I didn't see the game live. I saw it later on because I was doing a commentary in Leicester. But when did you know you had the triple double? Did you know during the game or find out after?
After it was after I knew I was close with the assists. I knew that I was right around that 10 mark. I thought it was going to be a double double. And then, yeah, someone came and said, well, you had 12 rebounds as well. And I mean, at that point, double overtime, you can sort of sense when you're having a good game, but in the moment when you're just trying to, like I said, I was just trying to do whatever it took to win. I wasn't really aware of what was going on. I was just, making sure that anything I was doing out there was contributing to the win. So.
I just wanted to ask, because sometimes you speak to a player and they know exactly what they've got throughout the game, but you honestly didn't know until you came off the floor. I also want to talk about Bristol. You got a chance. I know you had a brief cameo with the Riders in the BCL qualifier, but you had a chance to play regular European basketball this year. How was that experience for you in the EMBL?
Yeah, it was a special one. And there's highs and lows of that. I mean, the extra 8 games, the traveling to some of these European countries that may not have frequent flights out there and scheduling and everything. I mean, some of it was quite grueling in terms of getting back late, leaving early, and like I said, kind of being in some of these random European countries. However, that whole experience was it was amazing, to be fair. The way that we were able to gel really early on, we played a lot of games very early on, and it went a long way, and the experience was amazing because the group that we had, I think that can be really quite difficult and, lack of better words, more grueling if that group that you're sort of around every day, you struggle to connect with. And we had a really good relationship off the court. And I think that those trips and that European style basketball and all the experience sort of played into us growing as a team. And to play in a European competition as a British team is always a bit. I would say is you go out there and you want to put your best foot forward for sort of the country, let alone the badge. So to play and go up against the likes of Legia Warsaw and Bamberg and Bakken, who are a historic European team, it's fun. It's fun, and you go out there and you sort of you can just test yourself against that higher level of play. And we as a group really enjoyed that and reveled in that. And like I said, it built that camaraderie really early on, where we actually had a lot of games, and we were just hotel rooms, airports, hotel. Like it was a lot of fun. Tiring at times, don't get me wrong. It definitely added some mileage on the year in terms of where we were at with our bodies. But like I said, overall, the experiences was really good.
Did that have any impact in going to Bristol, the fact that you knew you'd get to play in Europe?
Yeah, it was actually. That was a part of it. It aligned with where I was at as a player in terms of me and Bristol, but it also made sense for getting a little bit of more progression in there. Obviously, I've been in the league now for a few years for a few different teams, and one of the areas that me and my agent Nick Lowry sort of highlighted was all right. We can make a step up in this league and we can have a bigger role, but we can also find a team that is playing further afield and sort of get more coaches and GMs eyes on you from that regard. So it was an emphasis for us in the off season to make sure that we weren't just going across, and we were taking a step towards bigger and better things for me as a player, and to, like I said, going up against those teams with that type of player was important personally to see where I was at, and secondly for head coaches and GMs of further afield to understand that the style of play transfers a bit, because I think our league is very unique in terms of play style and level in terms of where the players are at. A lot of talent, and I think places can get a bit skeptical of how performances in our league will transfer to theirs, and that's just a good case study to sort of show what's doable from a player that plays domestically in the UK and then is playing in a European competition.
Let's now take you back to the beginning. Is it true you were a teenager before you first started playing basketball?
That is the truth. Yeah, I was 13 years old when I pretty much first picked up a basketball properly for the first time. There was a small cameo beforehand on a holiday in Florida on a court, but at that point that was didn't then revisit it until probably about 13. So
So how did you get going? What was your first step?
yes, like I said, there was that small little holiday resort and then a little court playing out there with some kids, and then was always a football boy. Very much played a lot of football as a kid, and I loved it. And I was always very active. I played every sport in school, really. The classic, just very active kid. And then one Easter holiday, I think normally I would go on like a camp, like a sports camp or something, and basketball got brought up by my mum, and I ended up going to the basketball camp. Just kind of straight in the deep end, I guess, as a person that had never really played organized basketball before, and loved it. Ended up joining that team that ran the camp, and that was Bucks Hornets, based out in Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire. And yeah, that was the start.
And from there, I know you eventually went on to Barry University. How did you get from just starting with that club near Aylesbury to Florida?
Yeah, so junior program, under 13s all the way through to under 18s with Bucks Hornets, and then I moved on to Oakland's College for the Ace Academy at that point. I think it's called Dice now. But obviously there's a certain amount of the colleges in this country that have that elite academy status for the EABL and stuff. So I ended up going over to St Albans, which is the other side of Hertfordshire, and played under 18s there. Had the opportunity at that time to play Division One men's for Essex Leopards when I was 18 years old, which was super valuable in that moment. Just a little bit more physicality and semi-professional basketball, which sort of geared me up to then finishing off there that year at 18 years old and getting a scholarship opportunity to go to Barry University in the States, which was NCAA Division Two. And was there for 4 years, and then we get to Surrey.
Yeah, well, I first heard of you because I was doing the Scorchers commentaries back then. Creon had seen you. I think you had, off the top of my head, I'm going to say a 33-point game or something for Oakland's in the whatever that trophy was called. And then Creon's like, I'm bringing this guy in. And then you appear. Is that roughly how it happened? Or
Uh, yeah, pretty much. I mean, yeah, you're pretty close. I mean, it was a really weird time. That was the year that COVID happened. So I was meant to graduate 2020 in May. And obviously then professional basketball was very much in the balance. And, I'd come out of college thinking I was going to have this wonderful European adventure and playing professional basketball here, there, and everywhere. And obviously, it didn't work out the way I wanted to very early on. And I obviously went to Oakland, so Oakland's were playing Division One at that point, and there was a preseason tournament. And I think we played Thames Valley. Well, I remember actually, we played Thames Valley and Hemel Storm on like the same weekend. I think it was almost back to back. And I think I had 33 and then like 31 in both those games, and then Creon ended up picking up the phone, and next thing you know, I was down in Guildford for the rest of the season.
obviously, because we were both there at Surrey, it's looking back and it's just such a weird time because you're playing on a normal court and there's no one there. How was that for you? Because this is like your first professional experience and there's no one there watching you.
Yeah, it was completely unique, and obviously that's no case study for how a professional season feels and looks like and all that type of stuff. And at the time, I was still living at my parents' house in Hertfordshire, so every day I was picking myself up in the morning and driving an hour down to Surrey, practicing, walking out. No real socialising with even the guys. To be fair, I mean, obviously most of the guys lived around the campus, but like that didn't really, the socialization thing didn't really exist. And I would sort of pick myself up, shower, and end up, driving home an hour and be back here. So it was a very weird situation, and one that you just sort of took like with the flow. Like you didn't really know what it was going to look like or how it was going to feel. Obviously, I had no predetermining like feelings about what a professional season looks like. That was my first one. So it was just like show up, do the job, and to the best that you can, and then see how it goes. Because everybody was sort of in limbo there anyway. So I guess for me, it maybe wasn't as different for somebody like Teo, who had done 13, 14 years already. And didn't, and then was like, whoa, this is crazy. But like for me, it was just like, well, this is what's in front of me. Let's try and do it to the best we can.
That season, not a lot of people know, but at one point you actually had an offer to leave, didn't you? And then you didn't leave, but at the same time, the Scorchers brought in Cam Hildreth. What happened at that time?
Yeah, it was a strange one. And the agency I was with at the time, like I said, my goal coming out of college was to have a European basketball career, go to different countries and play and obviously build myself up that way. I've had a very different viewpoint on where my career was going at that moment in time. And I got an offer to go play in the top division in Iceland around Christmas time. And Creon had did always say, when he opened the door to me and gave me the opportunity, he was like, "Well, if there's other opportunities, we'd never stand in the way of you." And obviously, that goes a long way. Not a lot of coaches would do that. And I think at the time, maybe he didn't know maybe what to expect from me as a player. And I was by no means coming into the Surrey Scorchers to be a franchise guy. And maybe that conversation looks a little bit different for someone that is. But I was contributing to the team. I found myself in the rotation. And yeah, when the opportunity came, I spoke to Creon and he was like, look, like I said to you, we're not going to stand in the way. Um, One thing led to another and the deal basically fell through. But it had, we had the conversation and yeah, for whatever I actually can't bring it to my mind now, but it was all done and dusted until it wasn't, and it wasn't. And then yeah, I was in a point where Cam had come practice with us a couple of times, and I think coach expressed to Cam and his dad that it's great for Cam to be here, but like there's no real spot to play him. And then me leaving sort of opened that door for him. And then I mean, again, Creon was unbelievable in one giving me a chance, but also welcoming me back because that's a very difficult relationship to sort of maneuver in terms of you don't want to ever burn any bridges. And obviously, I made the conscious decision to leave the team to go to another team, and you never know how someone's going to really react to that. But obviously, I explained what had happened, and Creon being the unbelievable man that he is, brushed it off and was like, "Look, there's a place for you. Cam is now here, and Cam will be playing." So it was one of those where me and Cam then ended up splitting some time. And I'm a firm believer everything happens for a reason. And to give another young British player an opportunity to play at that level is huge. Cam obviously look at where Cam is now, and the opportunities he's got in front of him, and that obviously starting his time at Worthing and everything. But much like I had the invaluable experience of Division One men's playing basketball with Essex Leopards when I was at Oaklands, Cam had the opportunity to understand the physicality of the men's game at the BBL level at the time. So yeah, it was a weird situation, but like I said, everything sort of happens for a reason, and I think that for mine and Cam's and people's journeys, it worked out for the best in the end.
I'd say, yeah, with you two on the team, there were some great performances towards the tail end of the season. Now, it's just one of those things I always remember, like we weren't allowed to talk about it about the time. I thought, wow, it's a few years later. I'm sure we can talk about it now. That season in Surrey, and then you get a chance to go to Spain, and I'm probably going to butcher this now. Akimisa Carbajosa or something like that. Oh, is that
That's pretty
close or
good.
really?
That's
Was
pretty
it?
good.
I'm terrible.
It's probably just as good as my it's just as good as my pronunciation of it at the time.
So, how did this come about?
Well, yeah, similar sort of narrative to where me and my agent, we were going at that time. I was still very much of the impression that, a European basketball career was going to be how I was going to start my career and progress through and this and that. My agent at the time was Spanish, and that was sort of a conscious effort from me because I knew that if you got to go play in Spain, you'll be able to progress. It's one of those leagues where teams from the league above always sort of drop down and pick players from, the top performing in the league below. So it was one of those where it it wasn't the best situation, but it was one that if I went there and performed, that I would be able to, get to a place where I wanted to be. And yeah, to harp on that a little bit more, the club was in a difficult position, let's say. Finances were sticky, and it was one of those classic European scenarios where things weren't just, the engine wasn't running very smoothly. The money, the living situation, the food, culturally, it actually became a really difficult and dark time in my playing career because it got to a point where I was living in a box and really not enjoying the basketball. The workouts were just, I'd never really experienced anything like that in terms of just how heavy they were and how hard they were. And we were struggling on the court, and that led to just more practice. And it just became like a whole eruption of, yeah, just not being able to cope. And it got to about December, and everyone that knows me knows that I'm not someone that like gives up on something. And I was struggling to, you know, be the positive person that I am and, really enjoy my basketball for what it was. And at that moment, the joy for the game was dwindling. And I had to make a decision on, am I going to try and, gut this one out and finish out the season, or am I going to pull the plug on it and, readjust? Because whatever that situation was in that moment, it wasn't for me, unfortunately. And I still believe that if you would pick this person up who I am today and put him in that situation, I would still struggle the same way. So yeah, I had to make a very difficult decision at that moment to walk away from the team and to, like I said, reevaluate what was next in my playing career.
So you finished that season at Leicester, but did you leave there before you signed for Leicester, or did an offer come in and you decided to switch? How did it come about?
Uh, so I left the team in December, right before Christmas, or right after Christmas, I think. And then in January, I didn't really know what was going to happen. I was hoping, my agent was working with me at the time to try and find, a place for the rest of the season. At that point, it was proving quite difficult, and Will Maynard actually reached out to me in that moment and said, "Well, what are you doing?" Obviously, Will was at that moment he had just been put in charge of the Division One team at Loughborough Riders. That was his first thing, and he was like, "We might have an opportunity for you here." And that half of the season, so we're talking January to April, it was come play Division One. You'll be the main guy on the team, and then practice with the Riders, with the opportunity to sort of progress. And obviously, the goal for me, like I always, put in front of me, is to reach the highest level possible that's in front of me. So I knew that I was going to go play for the D1 team, and probably Rob and those guys at Leicester didn't probably think that I was going to try and break the rotation for the Riders, but I went in there and I did everything I could to break that. So that was the start of Leicester. I had that half season there, and then played one more full season afterwards.
So you had a little bit of success there as well while you're there, and then from Leicester you go on to Manchester. What was it? What were you doing in Manchester? Because I think when you studying as well for was it your postgraduate or something?
Yeah, so in line with how I thought that my career was going to go, like I said, I wanted to play in Europe. I wanted to climb the levels, and then the plan was to come home play in England, towards the back end of my career, get a master's degree, and that was my plan. Plan shifted at that point. I took up studying my first full season in Leicester. I ended up taking up MSc in marketing. So I did that for a year. It was a 2-year course. I transferred my credits to, well, that was part of the decision-making process in that off season. At that point, I had 1 year's worth of work under my belt, and I didn't want to go to waste. I wanted to finish it. Um, um, and essentially, I could have done that at Leicester. I could have stayed. I was offered back there. I didn't think that in terms of my basketball career, it was going to be beneficial for me to stay there. So I took a bit of a risk. Obviously, at this point, there's very few programs in this country that, do the whole masters, play professionally side of things. And looking back on it, turning down that Leicester offer was a very, risky move for me at the time, because I was trying to double down on my playing career, because I knew that if I didn't get the opportunity that I got at Manchester, I pretty much would have been pigeonholed in where my career was about to go from there. It would have been very difficult to create momentum in that environment. So deciding to turn the Leicester offer down, at that point, I didn't know that Manchester was a viable option. Ended up getting connected with Callum Jones at the time, and obviously that Manchester program at that point was in a bit of, a sticky situation themselves, and I knew that it was going to be very turbulent going there. However, I also knew that going there and playing for the Giants that year, I wasn't going to get a better role on any other team in the BBL. I think it was still called then at that point. In the BBL in that scenario, and that's literally what I needed. I needed a place to finish my master's degree, and I needed a place where I was going to get the chance to properly play. So yeah, that was what the whole decision-making process turned into, going to the Giants that year.
So it was a difficult situation in Manchester this season for the whole team, for everything. But how did you find it personally on the court?
Yeah, it was difficult. Don't get me wrong. I think the people that weren't involved will never fully understand the difficulties that we actually face as a group. But it was definitely one of those where, like I said, going into that decision was doubling down on me as a player, and where my career was about to go, depending on that year. So as much as it was painful, to say the least, at times, my approach was to be the shining light. What can I do in that moment, or in every game, is to show up and be the one that everyone's like, oh well, he's working hard, or he's doing the extra little bit, and that was really what it was. And in fairness, in a season where you're competing maybe for a trophy, and you're doing all these different things, your mind, it has to think about all the different aspects. You might be concerned about teammates, or schedule and things like that. I think the nonsense of the year made it actually really easy just to have sort of a tunnel vision on one goal. Personally, don't get me wrong, like everybody knows who's been a teammate of mine, I'm a very energetic person. I want to better the people around me, and that didn't change that year at all. But because there was no pressure or expectation, or any of those things around not the performance, that's not the right word, the outcome for things after the first couple of months, where we sort of all looked around and went, well, there's some serious limitations here that are going to hinder us from being successful as a team. like I said, I knew what I was there to do, and yeah, I just tried to execute that as well as I could, and the less distractions of the nonsense, the better. I was able to sort of tunnel myself in and just lock into that personal side of the game.
You talked about obviously studying and playing. What's it like? Because obviously at Manchester you'd be a full-time player, but also you've got to fit in that study. How was that for you?
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, obviously with the degree in America and doing it a year in Loughborough, it became super like normal. It's not you can never put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. Like there's some times where you might have to miss a practice or two because you've got an important lecture, and the other way around as well. And it was just making sure that the work was getting done. And that's on both ends, making sure that you're getting the extra work in on the basketball court, but also allocating that free time that you do have as a basketball player to be efficient with the work. Um, and that was learned. That was very much learned through my degree in the States. In America, it was you can't play basketball unless you're doing well in the classroom. So that sort of just carried over. Like, obviously, at a master's level, it's independent and you're responsible for your own successes almost. But like I said, having that learned behavior from doing 4 years in the States showed me how to be efficient with my time and how to, yeah, be able to balance the two.
So I take it now the degree's now done. You've got it all. Yes.
Absolutely, yeah. That's all science still delivered. No more education.
How does that fit into your future plans?
Yeah, I mean, basketball never lasts forever. Um, and somebody taught me that really early on, which is very valuable. I always knew that basketball was a vehicle for a lot of different things, to see different countries, to meet different people, and very much, progress yourself outside of the game because we play basketball, but we're not defined by it. So I've always sort of had that thought in my head, which is, like I said, been super invaluable to me. I was able to get an education because of it. And yeah, I don't necessarily know to what capacity, that education is going to be used for right now, but essentially it was always a stepping stone I wanted to take. It is a no-brainer really, and for it to open the doors that it has already, speaks volumes to the time and the effort and the energy that I put into making sure that got done.
And of course, even though basketball is still your number one priority at the moment, you also have a little job working in some sort of financial services. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I work for a company called True Life Financial. I'm a protection advisor, and I essentially just help clients with how they can best protect, their loved ones, themselves, and their assets, really. And that was me and Jamel Anderson. We obviously rubbed shoulders at Giants, but knew each other from before. Had a similar pathway through the game, actually. He works for the company as well, and he ended up introducing me to the boss over there, a guy called Aaron Burns, ex-professional football player, was very high on, athletes being involved in business. And yeah, it was a good match for me at the time. Like I said, basketball is a vehicle, and I always want to be able to do something along on the side. And this job has been exactly that. I can work, when I want, how much I want, and it all depends on, how much effort and energy I put into it. But yeah, but it's been amazing. One, getting to know new people and, essentially helping with that. I get a lot of energy and feeling of reward through that job. Being able to put people in a better financial situation, if it's families, parents with little ones, or if it's, even like-minded people like me, people that are very active that, have, a need for some injury and accident protection. There's a whole range of people to speak to. And yeah, it's like I said, it's been super rewarding so far and perfect for the situation that I'm in. I can work from home. I can go to the coffee shop. I can meet clients, or I can, virtually meet them. So it works really well for me. And like I said, super rewarding. I'm really, really enjoying learning a new realm, and yeah, continuing to sort of grow off the court. Because you never know when, that could get taken away from you. So.
Well, hopefully it's not for many, many years yet. I want to segue back onto the court. And of course, you've had a chance to play in the senior GB setup. Obviously, you've played at the under 20 level because I remember Andreas was one of your coaches back then. How was this for you in the senior team?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. So much pride to be able to wear your country across your chest, and obviously have your family's name on the back and sort of represent the two as you sort of go. I always find that a really, um, you know, supercharging experience. I love that. And yeah, it's always been a goal of mine. I think if you don't have making a national team in the sort of in the plans, then you might be in the wrong sector for that. So it was always something that I wanted to do, and to get the opportunity to be a part of the program, and a historic win in the copper box against Greece, and just all of that is just, it's an amazing experience regardless of the rest of it and how long you'll be in it for and all that type of stuff, because it's immaterial at that point. It was always a goal of mine, and I have been blessed enough to, my talents have been recognised to be a part of that group. What a group to be a part of! Rubbing shoulders with those guys is so much fun. And for me personally, I think the last window we had, I think five of us were 98, and then we had two 97s. So like half of the team is guys that one I grew up playing against, two ended up playing with on the junior program. So like to see their progression and to share that experience with them has been so much fun. That's the type of stuff that you can't even predict how it's going to go, but that, like I said, makes it all the more fun to be around people that you really enjoy their company, and yeah.
Yeah, when you said about the 97, 98 age group, so you made me feel really old there. Thank you for that. Of course,
Unintentional.
it's not just a 5-on-5 you've represented GB at. You also play 3x3. Now, how did that all come about for you?
Yeah, I do indeed, and that is something I'm really enjoying right now. It all came around. Well, how old am I now? 27. So it came around about 4 or 5 years ago. I'm in the summer, just kicking about after college. Like I'm in college at this point, so I'm back home for the summer. And it was one of the first times that the under 23s had a tournament out somewhere. Wasn't a part of the program at all, and it was around the COVID time as well. So this had wait, it must have been, when was it? Something to do with COVID. I may be off my timeline here. Don't quote me.
It
That's
lasted for a
completely
long
my
time,
fault.
don't
But
worry.
it did. It did. I was in the realm. Anyway, what happened is they took the team to the airport. One of the COVID tester came back negative or positive, sorry, and one of the lads couldn't travel. Uh, me and Krimesh, we were joking about this the other day actually, and shout out to him because I know that he was waiting for the shout out. He brought me onto the scene essentially. He was like, "Who's around?" And in the back of his mind, my name cropped up in his head. They're at the airport. They're trying to figure stuff out. I get a call being like, are you available to come to Israel to come and play 3x3 under 23s? Bearing in mind, I'd never played 3x3 before in my life. And next thing you know, I'm on a flight to Tel Aviv, and yeah, I ended up playing under 23s that summer in a couple of different countries for the country, and I came away from it, and it's like I'd been bit by a bug. I Everything that I want from basketball is in 3x3. The competitive nature of the game, the competition, the venues, the countries, the people, everything that I attach to joy is in 3x3 for me. Um, did that at under 23s a fair few years ago, and then ever since then I've been just biting at the bit to to get back to it. And we had some success making top 8 in Europe last summer. First time that we were together as a program, and it was very eye-opening and exciting for such little amount of investment and preparation time with a decent amount of success. Sort of showed that where we were at, and our ability as a nation to, if we ramped it up with those two things, then we'd be a powerhouse to work with. So yeah, anytime 3x3 is thrown in front of me, it's something that I really really enjoy doing. The game is amazing, like I said. All those factors of the game are just, yeah, they're ideal for me. And obviously, personally, it's been a bumpy start this summer. I've got a broken left thumb right now, but that is soon to be on the mend. We're about a week away from being ready to go. Obviously, we had the World Cup qualifiers as a group and the Euro Cup qualifiers that I missed out on. But we have the World Cup at the end of the month that I plan on being there, so I'm really excited about that. And yeah, moving forward, obviously with London 3x3, our professional team that now Ashley Hamilton and his wife Alice are essentially part owners of the team, and they've been absolutely amazing in terms of putting their blood, sweat, and tears into making something viable for British players to be able to play on what they call the World Tour, which is essentially the Pro Series for 3x3. And yeah, we're on a really interesting journey. I'll be, again, it's a bumpy start for me this summer, but it was meant to be my first season playing professional 3x3 with Ash for London on that tour. And yeah, I think we are in a very, very privileged position where, a lot of nations have the hand up on us in terms of the amount of years they've been playing it, but with the right amount of investment and time associated to it, with people like Ashley and Alice who are just, realizing the potential of the group that we have, and, really putting a lot into making it work. And obviously the people behind the scenes from GB with Fiona, and there's a lot of people that I haven't mentioned, but like there's a lot of positive buzz around the game. And personally, I want to be a part of it. I really want to be a part of it. It Yeah, it really excites me to think where we could be in a few years' time, and to be the trailblazers for the group, and to open that realm up for people that play basketball. That, like I said, maybe be right like me. Everything that they want from basketball is in that game and is around that culture. So yeah, obviously you can tell from what I've just said, I've just rambled on about it all, but it's something I could talk about all day. And I'm really excited to see us as a nation take it to the next level, and really, yeah, get behind the sport.
Well, the fact I haven't been able to get a question in just shows how much you really do like the code. What's the biggest differences between the forecourt 5-and-5 version and the 3x3 for you? Obviously, playing areas smaller. What's the differences in style of basketball?
I think the first thing to really bring to your mind when you try and compare the two is understanding that it's a different sport. We are playing basketball, but it is very much a different sport. And the things you look for, your advantages are just completely different. Completely different. Space is your friend. In this game, you've got half court, you've only got three defenders to deal with. Spacing is everything. And it's a sprint. You can't, in a 5-on-5 game. You can make a couple of mistakes in the first quarter, second quarter, and you'll probably be in a position where you can still win the game. I think if you are to look at the game 3x3, you make a couple too many mistakes in that first 5 minutes of the game, and you're going to take yourself out of it. So I think physically it's a sprint, and mentally it is very much the same. You are, for 10 minutes, you are just all go, and you need to be quick on your feet. You need to be quick in your brain. It's so competitive. It's really physical. The game's refereed a different way. Like I said, we are playing a completely different sport. I could talk about the nitty gritty of it all day, but those themes are the main things to to like bring to your mind when you sort of are trying to compare the two.
And you mentioned about the chance to go to Israel, the under-23s. How long did it take you to adapt from playing the 5-on-5 game to playing 3x3?
Um, Good question. It, I
Because
mean,
obviously
when
you
I
said
was,
different rules and stuff and nuances. So just how long it took you before you like, I've got this.
yeah, yeah, fair. I think I wouldn't even say now I've got it. I'm in a position where I'm a bit more experienced than, your average Joe. And I think essentially what really helps me is one of my biggest assets to my basketball game is my IQ. I may not be the most athletic, I may not be the most skilled player, but I am very good at figuring out what is required from me in a game. And I think that went a long way with me very early on, trying to understand the movement patterns, how you need to drive and shoot and what you need to look for. And I think, like I said, I'm far away from being a polished 3x3 player. But I think my ability to read, a situation and take things on board from what's being coached to me is one of my biggest strengths. So I think that just goes a long way with learning a new game.
So for anyone listening to this podcast and thinking, you know what, I'd like to give 3x3 a go. Can you think of some players or teams they should look out for? I mean, obviously you mentioned London, but anyone else or anywhere else they should look out for?
Yeah, I mean the first stop is going to be with us in London. I think, like I said, Ashley Hamilton and me are going to be on that team for the rest of the summer. Um, we're very much learning the game, but we're playing with a couple of guys that have played a couple of years. And yeah, it will only grow. Obviously, it will only grow. We're year one. We're a proper year one into the stage of where we want to be at. But it's called the World Tour. So the 3x3 World Tour is like the top event for the realm of basketball. The nations that are really good at 3x3, excuse me, are Serbia, Lithuania, USA are really good. Latvia are great. The Netherlands are a top team, and France. So anytime you sort of get the opportunity, I would much encourage you to do it. The good thing about it is it's super accessible. Obviously, most people these days use YouTube, and all of their events are streamed live on YouTube. So there's from the months of about April, end of April to about November, there most weekends there's going to be a professional circuit, and then there's going to be national team stuff. So we have the World Cup coming up, 23rd of June to the 30th of June. We're going to be out in Mongolia for that, and that's the top 20 teams in the world, and we're a part of that this year, which is excellent growth for us. So if you want to watch some 3x3 or you're a bit curious, then tune in on the 23rd of June and get to see us go up against some of the best teams in the world. So,
Well, obviously, I wish you best of luck with the 3x3 this summer. Hope you can do really, really well, and the thumb heals very quickly for you. Just want to say, Evan, it's been absolutely fantastic to get you on the podcast today. It's been great hearing about your BBL SLB journey and obviously your time now in 3x3. And I wish you all the best with it. And just to say thank you so much for jumping on and joining us.
yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. It's always nice to come across an old friend. I know, like I said, when we were in Surrey and things were a little bit restricted and everything, but as you grow in the league and stay around a bit, you get to know people. So no, I appreciate the time and the opportunity to come on here.
And finally, if you're enjoying what we do, please make sure to like, subscribe, or even share the pod on your social media. Every little bit of support helps. Until next time, my name's Niall Gray. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to the Euro Step Brit podcast, a hoops and hockey production.